I'm doing good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And a lot of people speculated that the Eagles needed a wide receiver, but most of the speculation was that they were going to get a quarterback, but they ended up with a wide receiver. Should Eagle fans be excited and happy with the way that their draft ended up, even if they didn't get Marcus Mariota?
Yeah, Marcus Mariota would have been a nice one. As someone who watched him for 3 years, he is awfully good. But what you're getting in Nelson Agholor is I think, a guy who fits what Chip Kelly wants to do. Having watched Chip at Oregon and then seen what he's trying to do, I love the comparisons to Jeremy Maclin. I mean, you look at those guys on paper, their numbers are astonishingly similar. But Aguilar's a guy who came in here at SC and really produced at a very high level for 3 years. And that's what Chip Kelly wants, a guy who can make plays with the ball in his hands. Nelson does that.
Yeah, this was a good wide receiver draft. Why do you think his name maybe wasn't up there with some of the elite guys? And I don't want to say he was – some people thought maybe a second-rounder or maybe a mid-first-rounder, but what are some of the things about him that had him under the radar a bit?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If you would have asked me at the end of last season, I would have said solid second round. But he did creep up nicely. I think it's his one of the things, his punt return ability. When you look, he set a USC record 4 touchdowns for punt returns in his career. I mean, we've had some pretty good ones out here. Reggie Bush returned punts for the Trojans, and so you can contribute that way. But he's a guy who just consistently produced. Last year, 104 catches, 12 touchdowns, 100 yards a game. That's a guy who's showing up every week, and I think that's something that Chip wants, is a guy who's pretty consistent.
Yeah, what is it about him to you that you saw over his tenure at USC that really that grew on you, that made you feel like, all right, this guy's going to make it at the next level?
That's a great question, because it was the way that he came in as a freshman, and he was a typical 18-year-old kid when he came in, liked watching cartoons and talking about that and everything. But then he started learning from Robert Woods and Marquise Lee, who were ahead of him. And at the end of his freshman year, you saw a transformation in just to a no-nonsense business attitude. And he was such a leader of the team from that point on, always setting the tone in practice and really treating it as a profession and looking forward to this moment. So without a doubt, that's the thing to Nelson that really stuck out to me, is how serious he took football while he was here.
Yeah, that's something that when he spoke last night, it sounded like this is a well-rounded young man, and you wonder, what are some of the things that you think he's going to need to work on? I mean, that's the one thing, but people look at it, well, he doesn't have that crazy speed that make people, go, wow. He doesn't have that huge size. He's not 6'3", 230 pounds. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's a 4'4" guy. He seems like a normal guy out there. What is it he's going to need to work on if he doesn't have those big attributes?
I think just maintaining consistency. There was a couple times where he didn't make the plays that you thought a veteran leader should have made in the situations last year. Because, like you say, he's not a guy who's going to wow you. He's going to be the consistent, steady guy, and so that's what he needs to bring to the table, in my opinion. And I don't think he's going to be far from that. Like I said, he puts in the work and he knows how to do that part. But if you're going to ask me for anything, it's just showing up every single week with that same result.
What is something about him what is the best spot for him in the NFL? What is something inside, slot guy, outside? I know he did a lot of his work in the slot, it seemed like, last year. And when they drafted Jordan Matthews last year, they played him exclusively in the slot. Chip was asked that last night, but he seemed to think he was going to move him around a lot more. But where do you think he fits best?
And that's interesting, because I do think that's one of the values for Nelson going with Chip, is the different ways that he can use him. But if you're going to ask me, he was mostly an outside guy his first 2 years. But like you said, he was played a lot in the slot last year, and I actually liked him better in that role. I thought he maneuvered very well in the middle of the field. He's a very savvy receiver in terms of his routes and the way he goes about things. But the biggest thing is getting him that ball in space, getting him that quick pass, and letting him get that initial bursting and get upfield. I think he could be real effective from the slot.
Nelson Agholor is another guy. You mentioned it. He helps in the return game, too. Is that something that you think he will excel at here in the NFL as well?
I would think so. Like I said, when you're setting a record for punt returns that guys like Reggie Bush and Anthony Davis and Curtis Conway didn't touch, you're doing something special. He's a big play punt return guy. We didn't see him return kickoffs as much. He was mostly as a punt returner, but he was as effective as anybody in terms of making the occasional big play. I don't see why that wouldn't translate.
Yeah, one thing, Garry Paskwietz is with us here. He covers the USC Trojans for ESPN LA. Nelson Agholor, the 20th pick, for the Philadelphia Eagles. His numbers are pretty unbelievable. I see that he dropped just 4 passes last year, and that's something that I think Chip Kelly really values, a guy that will catch the football no matter where it's thrown.
Right, and that's what kind of we were talking about earlier, that consistency. And I like the fact that Chip seems to be reaching so often back to the West Coast to guys that he knows, to guys that he has seen before. And so he's coached against Nelson Agholor. He knows what he brings, and that, I think, is the best thing for Nelson. You've got to be a pro at this level, and Nelson's not going to sit there and be dropping passes and everything. No, he's going to show up every day working hard, and he's going to produce. I do think that's something Chip really liked about him.
Yeah, now we mentioned like playing outside and playing in the slot, and Chip Kelly obviously runs a spread style of offense in here, a lot of bubble screen stuff. And I watched a lot of stuff of Nelson. It seems that he's a guy who can catch that ball in the bubble screen, but it's what he does after he catches the ball that really makes him an NFL player, it looks like.
Well, without a doubt, and such a nice fit for Chip's system. That's something that both Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian did a lot of. They believe get the ball to that receiver really quick and let him get upfield and make a play. And like you say, Nelson has such good initial burst. Like you say, he's not a blazer. I don't think he's going to really wow you at the top end of the wide receivers. But when you look at him catch that pass quickly, he can get upfield pretty quick.
One thing that I guess this day and age, Gary, is systems in the NFL. Marcus Mariota, he might be great in Philadelphia, but maybe he doesn't fit as well in Tennessee. Do you think that is a similar situation with wide receivers? Is this a place where Nelson fits very well with Philadelphia and what they do, but maybe wouldn't be a great fit for somebody else?
I think that's a fair statement, and I think for Eagles fans, it's a good news situation because I do think he fits so well in what Chip does.
All right, Garry Paskwietz, ESPN LA, with a look at the newest Eagle wide receiver, Nelson Agholor, and he will be here next week when the Eagles work out, and we'll hopefully get a chance to talk and look at him. But, Gary, thanks for giving us a little insight on him.
Hey, thanks for your time, Mike.